So the next one we're going to try is, some people call it log stacking pose, other people call it fire log pose, other people call it double pigeon. What we're trying to do is to stack the shins and the legs one on top of the other, and then we do various bits and pieces. This is not accessible for very many people, so again there are a couple of alternatives that we can try to make it a little bit more accessible. One is sitting on a bolster, which I like to do occasionally, so just a flat bolster or a cushion. The other, if you find when you're sitting cross-legged that your knees are up here, and you know, there's just no way you're going to get one shin on top of the other, you can use some blocks. So we still like to try and get a position where the shins are coming towards parallel with the front of the mat. You could put a block or a bolster or a cushion or something under the bottom knee, and then you just cross the top leg to wherever works for you. It could stay like that. You could put a bolster under that ankle, block, sorry. You could put another block under between the two legs. So you just get to a position where you're kind of propping up your legs, but you're trying to make as much of a sort of parallelness in your shins to the front of the mat and to each other, rather than them being sort of diamond shaped or pulled in like a cross-legged situation. So either way, wherever you're at, whether you're propped up with blocks, whether you are fine to approximate some version of this shape and it doesn't affect your knee, then you can carry on with some of the things that we're going to do. If it really affects your knee, if you feel it pulling in either of your knees, either not for you, or you need to try and make some more of those modifications, lift up the knees in whichever ways you can to try and get the strain out of the knee. From here, we're going to try and do a couple of actions. So for some of you, this is probably intense enough. If you can manage to get the stacking, I like to flex my feet, so just engaging the legs, and then you can either sit up straight, just try and stay here and breathe, or you can start to lean forwards, but try and keep the chest lifted, so you could use your hands on your hips to help you lift the chest and then start to come forwards. Or you can have your hands in front of you and start to, again, keep the chest lifted for as much and as long as possible. And by that I mean until you get more flexibility. So you keep doing this regularly, and then when you start to get a bit more flexibility, you can start to then come forwards and kind of fold over the legs. Maybe you can just rest for a while like this. Maybe you can just completely soften and round. I kind of like having my palms turned up. It just helps to kind of open the back a little bit in this pose. And just hang it here for as long as you can. This is quite an excruciating pose for most people, so you know, you may not be able to hold it very long, but at least try and hold whatever stretch you're doing for about 30 seconds. Again, knee permitting. If there's anything in the knee that doesn't feel good, then stop doing that. Once you've kind of done that bit of stretch for a while, or this bit of stretch for a while, you could take it into a different trajectory, leaning over the top foot. So again, for some of you that may be beyond the pale, for some of you here might be good. For some of you, you might be able to really stretch and come down over the top foot, really creating length between the front hand and the corresponding sitting bone, as much length as you can. And then after you've been here for a while, you could keep the one hand on the floor, and then the hand that's the top leg, bring it to the thigh on that leg and externally rotate it. You're just grabbing the flesh and turning that leg out, that thigh out. And then again, staying here and breathing. So even people who are relatively flexible in this way, this can be a really good pose for you still, to deepen the kind of lotus position and that sort of thing, some of the poses that we do. But for most of us who have very desk-bound lives, or you know, do lots of other activities that are sort of much more high intensity, these kind of stretches are really, really intense, and they are probably the ones that we need to do the most. And then we change sides, so we'll change other leg on top, same thing again. Use your props and your blocks as much as you need to create support, so that we're trying to open the thighs without strain in the knees in any way. And then exactly the same thing, once they're stacked, keep the feet active and engaged, and then think about how you're going to lift and come forwards, whether it's hands on your hips lifting forward, hands on the floor lifting forward. Keep that length until you start to feel less intensity, and then whenever you feel, after you've done this for a while, you want to start coming into a rounding position, doing whatever version works for you. Holding that for at least 30 seconds, and then again the same thing. Let's do over the top foot on the other side. So quiet and active stretch from the sitting bone to the fingertips. You can keep the chest lifted, you can soften and round, depending on where you are. And then once you've done that for a while, taking the hand and externally rotating that thigh and holding the pose for as long as you possibly can. These are really good for while you're sitting and watching TV, while you're listening to the radio, while you're sitting and talking to your family, having a glass of wine, dare I say it, whatever you like to do. Thank you.